Story time. What if I told you that the most revolutionary lessons about love, courage, and purpose weren't discovered in a lab or written in a best-selling book, but whispered in the desert by men who owned nothing, feared nothing, and loved everything rightly? Today, I want to take you to Egypt, not the Egypt of the pyramids or tourists, but the Egypt of the soul. A place where silence was the teacher and holiness was the curriculum. There, one man named Abba Antonie, the father of monks, learned how to live free from fear. And I believe that his lessons, spoken almost 17 centuries ago, are more urgent now than ever. Because today our deserts aren't made of sand, they are made of noise, notifications, opinions, expectations. And amid all that noise, the human heart is starving for stillness. So let's go to the desert together and rediscover what it means to live without fear, to love God not out of terror, but out of trust. Once, Emperor Constantine, the most powerful man on earth, wrote a letter to Abba Antonie. Imagine that the Emperor of Rome personally writes to a hermit in the desert. And what did the letter say? He invited Anthony to come to Constantinople, the capital of the empire, to meet him. It was a great honor, a once in a lifetime invitation. Anthony took the letter in his hands and read it. He said to his disciple Abba Paul, "What should I do? Should I go?" And Paul replied with one of the wisest lines ever spoken. "If you go, your name will be Anthony, but if you stay, your name will be Abba Antonie." Let's pause there. Paul wasn't saying that travel was wrong. He was saying something far deeper. Power changes how people see you, but solitude preserves how God sees you. In our world, everyone wants to be seen, to be recognized, verified, followed, validated. But the Desert Fathers remind us the goal of the spiritual life isn't visibility, it's purity. Not to be known by many, but be known by God. When Anthony stayed in the desert, he taught us something radical. Sometimes the holiest answer to an invitation is simply no. He didn't reject the emperor. He rejected the temptation to become an emperor himself. And that choice preserved his soul. Today, we each receive our own letters from the emperor. They arrive as job offers, social invitations, or even notifications that promise importance. Come, be seen, be heard, be someone. But every yes we give to the world without discernment risks a no to God. The question is not whether opportunities are good or bad. The question is, will this invitation make me Anthony or Abba Antonie? Think of how this applies to modern life. The influencer who trades silence for clicks. The leader who sacrifices prayer for productivity. The believer who confuses visibility with vocation. To each of us, Abba Paul whispers, "If you go, your name will be Anthony. If you stay, your name will be Abba Antonie." And in that quiet sentence hides a lifetime of discernment. Sometimes success is simply staying hidden until God reveals you. So Abba Antonie stayed, and through that choice, something even deeper happened within him. Fear began to die and love began to rule. He once said something that confuses modern ears. "I do not fear God anymore, for I love him." For love drives away fear. At first, that sounds dangerous. How can a man of God say he doesn't fear God? But Anthony wasn't boasting. He was transfigured. He had journeyed from fear to love, from trembling before God to resting in God. This is the same journey Saint John described centuries later. Perfect love casts out fear. John chapter 4, the first letter. Let's think logically, like a conversation that invites us to. Fear and love cannot occupy the same space forever. Fear is the beginning of wisdom, it awakens you, but love is the perfection of wisdom, it unites you. Fear says, God might punish me. Love says, God desires me. Fear runs away from the fire. Love walks into it, knowing the fire purifies. Abba Antonie reached the point where the fear of God matured into the love of God. He no longer obeyed out of terror, but out of tenderness. That's the shift the Christian life is meant to bring. From a religion of anxiety to a relationship of adoration. We live in a culture built on fear. Fear of missing out, fear of rejection, fear of aging, failure, silence, sickness, death. Even religion, when misunderstood, can be used to frighten rather than to free. But Abba Antonie reminds us, love, not fear, is the end of the spiritual journey. The saints are not people who stopped trembling before God. They are people who started trusting Him completely. And that trust transforms how we see everything. Imagine if our churches, our homes, our relationships were filled not with fear of punishment, but with love of presence. That's the kingdom of heaven on earth. Now let's look at Antonie's third saying. He told his disciples, you should always have before your eyes the fear of God. Remember the one who kills and makes alive. Hate the world and the things that are in it. Hate bodily rest. Give up this life to live for God. Remember what you have promised to God, for He will ask you about it on the day of judgment. To be hungry, to be thirsty, to wear poor clothes, to keep watch, to weep, to sigh from your heart, to test yourself if you are worthy of God, to humble the body so that the soul may be saved. It sounds severe, but remember, He's not talking about self-hatred. He's talking about focus. The desert fathers lived with radical clarity. They knew life was short and eternity long. They practiced self-denial not because the body was evil, but because the soul was precious. Antonie's list is not punishment, it's training. He's describing spiritual discipline, fasting, vigilance, humility. Each is a way for reminding the body that it is a servant, not a master. We may not live in deserts, but our souls still need training. For us, hunger might mean turning off the phone for an hour. Thirst might mean longing for silence instead of scrolling. Poor clothing might mean simplicity instead of consumerism. Vigilance might mean self-awareness rather than self-promotion. We can live in cities but still keep a desert in our hearts, a space uncluttered, alert, and alive to God. When Abba Antonie spoke of tears, sigh, and self-examination, he wasn't promoting despair. He was describing the birth pains of resurrection. Because every moment of honest repentance is a new creation. In Genesis, God says, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed. You shall have them for food. This was before sin, before death, before sacrifice. The original diet of humanity was peace, not predation. No blood, no slaughter, no domination. But after the fall, fear entered the world, and with fear came violence. Then centuries later, through the prophets, God cried out, what makes you think I want all your sacrifices? He was not rejecting the temple, he was rejecting hypocrisy. He was saying, I don't want your burnt offerings. I want your burning hearts. And finally, In the New Testament, Christ fulfills both verses. He restores the garden and replaces the altar with the cross. No more blood of bulls or goats, only his blood, shed once for all. Abba Antonie lived that truth before theologians wrote it. He embodied the reconciliation of Genesis and Calvary, the return from fear to love. Now, what do these three sayings teach us together? The first saying, the Emperor's letter, teaches detachment from the illusion of importance. The second saying, I do not fear God anymore, teaches movement from fear to love. The third saying, remember the one who kills and makes alive, teaches discipline of body and vigilance of soul. Together, they form a map of transformation. Detachment purifies your motives, love purifies your heart, discipline purifies your life. This is the structure of sanctity, not magic, not mystery, but method. Each of us must pass through three deserts. The desert of status, where we learn to stop chasing human approval. The desert of fear, where we learn to trust God even when we don't understand Him. The desert of the flesh, where we learn to master our impulses, not be mastered by them. Every saint, every seeker walks this same path. The only difference is how consciously we walk it. You don't need a monastery to become monastic. You don't need a monastery to become monastic. You need rhythm, sacred rhythm. Start the day in silence. End the day with gratitude. Let small disciplines carve large holiness. Abba Antonie's rule can still be lived in apartments, offices, classrooms. The point isn't geography, it's geometry. The heart turned toward heaven. Remember, Antonie didn't stop fearing God because he grew careless. He stopped fearing because he grew intimate. When a child fears a father's punishment, that's immaturity. When a child loves the father's presence, that's maturity. That's why love is the crown of theology, because love never ends. Heaven, said Saint Isaac the Syrian, is the love of God experienced as joy. Hell is the same love experienced as regret. Love is everywhere, but how we receive it defines eternity. Abba Antonie teaches us to receive that love rightly, here and now. So maybe this is the challenge for us today. The world doesn't need more Antonies, clever, visible, accomplished. It needs more Abbas. Abbas means father. Silent, steady, faithful. People who don't fear missing out because they are already found what matters. People who stay in their deserts until love replaces fear. That's holiness in modern language. Stillness in chaos. Peace in pressure. Love in fear. Let me end with a thought experiment. Imagine if Abba Antonie had gone to Constantinople. He would have been remembered as a wise counselor to the emperor. But because he stayed, he became the father of thousands. Sometimes the quiet no you say to the world becomes the loudest yes you ever say to God. And from that yes grows the only love that lasts, a love that casts out fear. So ask yourself today, what is your emperor's letter? What are you being invited to that looks glorious but empties your soul? And what desert is God calling you to stay in until fear turns to love? Maybe your desert is prayer. Maybe it's forgiveness. Maybe it's staying faithful in a place where no one sees you. Whatever it is, stay there long enough for love to bloom. Because when love blooms, fear dies. And when fear dies, heaven begins, even now. If this message touched you, Share it with someone who lives in fear, someone who is ready to trade anxiety for adoration. Remember, the desert is not a place of death, it's the birthplace of love. Stay faithful, stay silent, stay in love, and let perfect love casts out fear. See you next time. God bless you.